In the hidden corners of ancient history, where angels expelled from heaven once roamed, tales speak of their quest to rule Earth, birthing a legion of mythical beings considered as gods. These entities emerge from a blend of celestial pride and rebellion, shaping a group of creatures that blurred the lines between human and animal. The narratives of angels meddling in earthly affairs, crafting hybrids like centaurs and Anubis, may hold more truth than fiction. Join us as uncover the secrets of our past through myth and legend, seeking to unravel the mysteries that humans have endured through the ages. When the first gods walked the earth. As we delve into the rich narrative of myths that human culture has spun over centuries, an interesting pattern starts to reveal itself. This pattern is made up of gods and mystical beings that challenge our everyday reality by combining human and animal traits. We also find stories filled with giants and creatures that seem to belong more to a dream than to our world. These fascinating tales, brimming with wonder, appear to grow from the fertile soil of human curiosity, or maybe from an even deeper, more mysterious place. Now we set off on a journey filled with skepticism through this dense forest of myths, ready to question everything and eager to discover the secrets hidden in these age-old stories. At the center of our quest is a daring idea. Might there be a sliver of truth, or perhaps a widely shared illusion, connecting these varied tales from different cultures and times? Let's take a hard look at the ancient writings and sacred texts, the storehouses of human creativity and imagination that have somehow managed to survive through the ages. Among these, the Book of Giants stands out, an apocryphal work that ventures to add more detail to the narrative found in the Book of Enoch. Within its pages, we find a story bold enough to shock. Fallen angels who break away from their divine roles to engage in wild acts of creation, mixing together the forms of birds, beasts, reptiles, and fish into a bizarre new life. What really grabs the attention of the skeptic is not merely the actions described, but how these tales resonate with the story of a corrupted world as told in the book of Genesis. In Genesis, we're presented with a world that has lost its way, filled with violence and desolation, a perfect reflection of the chaos described in the Book of Giants. It suggests these ancient writings might not be mere flights of fancy, but serious attempts to wrestle with profound issues of existence from different perspectives. Could it be that our forebears weren't just spinning yarns for entertainment, but were embedding real observations of their world into these stories, albeit skewed by time and their imagination? This idea is intriguing, pushing us to think about the purpose of these myths. Were they a means to understand a world where the blending of forms was a common occurrence, seen in the diversity of life itself? Or were these stories a way to explore what it means to be human in a world full of life that defies easy categorization? As we dive deeper into the mysterious realms of ancient mythology, especially the tales concerning gods, giants, and creatures of mixed nature, we find narratives that not only capture our imaginations, but also reflect the intricacies of our own reality. These stories, originating from civilizations all around the world, embody the universal human endeavor to make sense of the chaos that surrounds us and to seek meaning in our existence. The Greeks had a rich collection of gods and magical creatures who they believed had both human traits and magical powers. These beings were thought to live on Mount Olympus and were in charge of everything that happened in the human world. Important figures in Greek stories include Zeus, the king of the gods, Hera, his queen, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Each of these gods played a role in different parts of life and nature. This shows that the Greeks had a deep understanding of the two sides of life, the civilized side that we live in day by day, and the wild, instinctual side represented by creatures like the Minotaur, who was stuck in a maze on the island of Crete. Greek stories are full of creatures that are mixtures of humans and animals, like the centaur, half human, half horse, the chimera, a lion with a goat's head on its back and a snake for a tail, and the sphinx, with the body of a lion and the head of a human. These mixed creatures show the Greeks' fascination with the battle between different parts of our nature and desires. One of the biggest battles in Greek mythology is the Gigantomachy, a huge war between the giant children of the earth goddess Gaia and the gods of Olympus. This story was a big deal in Greek culture and was often shown in their art. It was about the fight for control of the universe. The giants, sometimes mixed up with the titans, were seen as forces of chaos that fought against the ordered world the Olympian gods wanted. When we look into these stories, we're reminded of how people have always tried to make sense of the chaotic world around them. The tales of gods, their adventures on earth, and the creatures worshipped by ancient peoples give us a unique way to think about our history. These stories blur the line between what's real and what's made up, just like how myths mix humans and animals. Diving deeper into these stories, we're doing more than just finding out about the adventures of gods. We're uncovering the deep fears, wishes, and endless curiosity that have pushed people forward throughout history. These myths, with their gods who are both like us and not, and their stories of great disasters, might be the old versions of our modern science fiction. They explore what-if ideas that push us to think differently about our world and our place in it. These stories, then, aren't just entertainment. They challenge us to think about what we believe and to try to understand the human condition better, looking for connections and understanding in a world full of mysteries. Join us as we dig into the past, linking divine tales to the legends that have shaped civilizations. From gods to monsters, the real stories behind myths. Holding on to these old stories, let's walk through history and myths, taking a slightly doubtful look to discover amazing similarities in religious stories and myths from the past. It's really interesting, right? The way these big, complicated myths from all sorts of different places seem to reflect each other, drawing pictures of gods and magical beings that look a lot like the mixed-up creatures we were just talking about with a bit of wonder. These magical beings, often thought of as kings or gods, mix up what we think of as godly and monstrous, suggesting a common interest or maybe a belief shared by people from different places. Going into ancient Egypt's desert, we find a group of gods that are part human and part animal, showing how complex and varied the world they were supposed to look after was. Anubis, or Inpu, as he was known back then, is a great example. He's shown as having a human body but the head of a dog, showing he was in charge of the dead. Anubis had a lot of different jobs, from watching over graves and preparing bodies for the afterlife to leading souls to their next world. He was really important for deciding if someone was good enough for the afterlife because of his role in the weighing of the heart ceremony. Even though Anubis was a big deal in Egyptian religion, he doesn't show up in a lot of stories. His role stayed pretty much the same, focusing on his serious duties to those who have passed away. Anubis is often shown in black, which stood for rebirth in the rich, life-giving soil of the Nile River, linking him to both death and new beginnings. His background is full of mystery, with stories saying he's the son of Nephthys and Osiris. This complicated family story, including how Isis took him in, shows Anubis as more than just a death god, but a key player in a story full of trickery, murder, and the search for fairness. Worship of Anubis was common, with priests wearing masks of his face for ceremonies, showing how much he was respected all over Egypt. He had a main worship place in Sinopolis, and his symbols, like in artwork, grave markers, and charms, along with symbols like the Ankh and the Waz scepter, showed his power over death and his role in protecting and guiding the dead. As Egyptian myths evolved, Anubis's job changed a bit when Osiris became more important as the ruler of the underworld. But even with this change, Anubis kept an essential role in Egyptian burial practices, standing for safety, direction, and making decisions. His family, including his wife Anput and their daughter Kebechet, shows how Egyptian gods were all connected, each having a special part in what happens after death. When we look at Greek myths, we step into a world where nature and magic blend, filled with creatures that are part god and part hero, playing big roles in the stories of gods and heroes. The centaur and the minotaur are especially interesting because they mix human and animal parts, showing the tricky balance between living in a society and following our wilder sides. Centaurs, those mythical beings with human torsos atop horse bodies, often show up in stories as wild and unruly, representing chaos in the untamed world, a sharp contrast to the structured and ordered life of human societies. However, not all centaurs are seen in this light. Some, like Chiron, are known for their wisdom and played the role of mentor to legendary heroes such as Jason and Achilles. This clash between the untamed and the civilized is vividly portrayed in the story of the Centauromachy, where the centaurs' attempt to kidnap a Lapith king's bride results in their defeat by the hero Theseus. On the other hand, the Minotaur, part man and part bull, symbolizes the fascination with the monstrous. Born from a cursed union and confined within the labyrinth by King Minos of Crete, the Minotaur demanded human sacrifices, reflecting the dark aspects of Minos' rule. The story of Theseus, who chose to confront the Minotaur, navigating the labyrinth and defeating the beast, underscores heroism and the ability to overcome monstrous challenges through wit and bravery. These characters from mythology were more than just made-up monsters. They offered the Greeks a way to think about personal and societal conflicts, and the ongoing struggle between noble aspirations and primal desires. In a similar vein, Babylonian mythology introduces us to its own set of hybrid beings, such as the Lamassu and the Sirish, which blend attributes of different creatures. These beings functioned as protectors, embodying the mix of divine and monstrous qualities that characterize so much of ancient mythology. Just like in Greek and Egyptian tales, these creatures were central to the stories and beliefs of the time, representing the complex relationship between gods, humans, and the natural world. Exploring these myths invites us to consider why such stories were so important to our ancestors. What were they trying to express through tales of gods that combined human and animal forms, and creatures that defied simple categorization? It seems they were capturing the essence of their world, where the natural and supernatural were closely intertwined, offering explanations for the unexplainable and bringing order to chaos. As we analyze these stories with skepticism, we might be tempted to see them as nothing more than products of vivid imaginations. Yet the recurring themes of hybridity and divine intervention reveal profound insights into human nature. Our fascination with the limits of reality and our desire to understand our place in the universe are reflected in these tales. The myths of gods and monsters, stretching across different cultures and epochs, are not merely entertaining stories but reflections of our deepest fears, desires, and the universal human quest to find meaning in the chaos of life. Thus, these ancient myths, with their pantheons of hybrid gods and divine rulers, offer a glimpse into the soul of humanity, highlighting our eternal yearning to connect with something greater than ourselves, no matter how fantastical or terrifying that might be. Curious about myths being real? Let's see what ancient stories of rebel angels tell us. The secret behind old myths. Were gods really angels? When we take a closer look at the stories in the Book of Giants and the Book of Enoch, we stumble upon a fascinating and somewhat wild idea. These stories tell us about fallen angels who had big dreams and a bit of an attitude problem. They wanted to mess things up on Earth and take over, kind of like the villains in many ancient myths we know and love. It makes you think, doesn't it? Were the creatures of myths from the Greek half-horse, half-human centaurs, the dog-headed Egyptian god Anubis, to the protective Babylonian figure Lamassu, just made-up characters? Or could they have been inspired by these rebellious, heavenly beings trying to play the role of gods? This thought leads us down a rabbit hole full of questions about history and religion that really make you scratch your head. Is it possible that the gods our ancestors prayed to were actually created by these rule-breaking angels from the sky? This theory suggests that the mythological characters we read about might have been real leaders and rulers way back in ancient times, echoing the fallen angels' desires. Connecting these dots between old religious texts and the vast array of global myths brings us a step closer to possibly figuring out some of the big mysteries of our past, and maybe even getting a better grasp on who these so-called gods really were. In the stories passed down from Egypt, Greece, and Babylon, these powerful figures weren't just symbols or lessons in a story. People truly believed they were gods with incredible powers, influencing everything in people's lives. In ancient Egypt, for example, the connection between the gods and the pharaohs was super strong. Pharaohs were considered to be gods walking on earth, acting as a bridge between people and the higher powers. This belief made them super important, giving them a divine right to lead. The myths from Babylon are filled with gods who did more than just hang around. They were believed to shape the world, control nature, and rule over society, much like the ambitions we hear about the fallen angels. One of the big stories, the Enuma Elish, talks about the god Marduk, who brings order to chaos by defeating the chaos monster, Tiamat. This tale emphasizes how important gods were believed to be in making the world and keeping everything running smoothly. Marduk's win and his place as the top god showed people believed gods had a hand in guiding the fate of the world and everyone in it. So diving into these ancient stories is about more than just enjoying old tales. It's about exploring deep questions about faith, power, and the nature of the universe. It challenges us to think about the origins of these stories and what they say about human belief and imagination through the ages. In the ancient city of Babylon, the gods they prayed to were much more than just powerful beings. They were integral parts of daily life, shaping both the natural world and the wisdom of its people. Among them were Ishtar, the goddess known for both her nurturing love and fierce warrior spirit, Nabu, who was revered for his deep wisdom, and the gods Enlil and Enki, who embodied the very essence of nature and knowledge. These deities were not standalone entities, but were interconnected in a belief system that mirrored the values and worries of the Babylonian people. In their homes, Babylonians didn't just worship the major gods. They had personal gods too, almost like divine guardians for every family. These personal gods were like celestial parents, believed to have a direct line to the more powerful gods, and could ask for favors or protection on behalf of the people. This practice shows just how close the people felt to their gods, relying on them for daily guidance and protection. Idols played a huge part in Babylonian religion. Far from being just decorative, these statues were thought to be filled with the spirit of the god they represented. Taking care of these idols was a sacred duty, showing the respect and love the Babylonians had for their gods. They believed these gods were active participants in their world, not distant or uninterested observers. When we draw parallels between these rich mythologies and the stories of the fallen angels, it's hard not to see the similarities. It makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, the myths weren't entirely made up, but were inspired by real events where beings from the heavens mingled with the human world. While this idea might sound more like a plot from a fantasy novel, it does challenge our usual way of thinking about these ancient stories. By looking critically at these old myths, we're invited to question everything we thought we knew about them. It encourages us to think deeply about the concept of divinity and how these stories of celestial rebellion might have intertwined with the actual history of our world. The possibility that our ancestors might have been worshiping beings from beyond our earth, as described in the tales of the fallen angels, opens up new, intriguing, and somewhat unsettling possibilities for our understanding of history and mythology. Ready to find out if myths were true? Let's uncover the reality behind the gods. Ancient gods, truth or myth? Exploring the idea that figures like Anubis and the centaur were not just products of rich collective imaginations, but possibly echoes of grand celestial schemes, we dive into a story filled with mystery and excitement. This intriguing concept suggests that these beings, blending human and animal features, were not just mythical, but real leaders with significant influence over ancient societies. It implies that the fallen angels, in their bold pursuit of godliness, created these hybrid entities to serve as divine rulers, transforming ancient history into an epic tale that spans the cosmos. This thought-provoking idea creates a bridge between the disjointed ancient texts and the vast array of myths from around the world, adding a new layer of depth to our understanding of the past. The stories passed down over generations may not have been mere flights of fancy, but could represent coded messages revealing the divine governance of old civilizations. Turning our attention to the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, we encounter a key moment where human ambition and divine will clash. According to the book of Genesis, people united in their effort to build a tower reaching the heavens, showcasing their collective ambition. However, seeing this ambition as a threat, God mixed up their languages, spreading them far and wide. This act led to the creation of diverse cultures and civilizations across the globe, each with its unique blend of the human and the divine in their religious beliefs. This diversity hints at the intriguing possibility that the scattered descendants of Babel might have carried forward the legacy of the fallen angels' divine experiments. In the ancient world, gods and goddesses were not just spiritual entities, but played a crucial role in shaping every aspect of human life, culture, and environment. Civilizations like the Phoenicians, Egyptians, Babylonians, Greeks, and even those as far-flung as China developed complex pantheons that reflected their innermost values and concerns. For instance, the Phoenicians worshipped deities such as Baal, who represented fertility and rain, and Astarte, a goddess of love and war. Melkart, particularly honored in Tyre, stood for monarchy, the sea, and hunting, and was credited with the city's prosperity. These gods were integral to the Phoenicians' worldview, influencing everything from business to daily life, illustrating how deeply intertwined the divine and the mundane were in these ancient societies. In Egypt, gods with animal heads like Anubis and Bastet were very important. Anubis had a jackal's head and helped people after they died, looking after things like mummification and burial rituals. This shows how the Egyptians had complex ideas about death and what comes next. Bastet, who was shown as a lioness or a cat-headed woman, kept homes safe and helped women have children. Over in Babylon, they had a well-organized set of beliefs with gods such as Marduk. Marduk brought order out of chaos and was seen as a figure of fairness and control over both nature and people's lives. Their stories, like the Enuma Elish, told how the world was made and emphasized the gods' jobs in keeping things balanced between order and messiness. The Greeks were into creatures that were part human and part animal, like centaurs and the Minotaur. These creatures showed how the Greeks were curious about where the natural world ended and where human life began, and what we can learn from these stories. Heroes often had adventures that involved these creatures, which showed bravery, smarts, and a desire to learn more. Even in China, dragons and other mystical beings were a big deal. They stood for strength, intelligence, and the forces of nature. These figures were a big part of Chinese culture, touching everything from art to how they ran their country, and showed how deep and thoughtful the Chinese view of the world was. This idea that gods and mystical beings from different parts of the world might share a common background is really interesting. It's like all these cultures, from Egypt to China, might have been influenced by the same stories that got spread around after the Tower of Babel, when humanity got scattered across the earth. Thinking that our ancient family members might have actually worshipped these beings from stories not only puts old myths in a whole new light, but also makes us rethink everything we thought we knew about these gods. It suggests that the gods from our past weren't just made-up stories, but were part of a bigger heavenly drama that played out right here on our planet. Let's dive into ancient stories, seeing if myths about godlike beings and creatures came from real events. The time when angels ruled our world. Combining stories from the Tower of Babel, tales of fallen angels, and a wide variety of gods from ancient myths, we dive into an exciting journey that spans different cultures and times. This journey reveals a story filled with guesswork and theories about how these cultures and their gods might share a common origin, possibly tied to the grand plans of fallen angels. These celestial beings apparently didn't just want to take over, they aimed to fill the earth with creatures made in their image, effectively staging a heavenly takeover. As we navigate through old writings, myths, and historical accounts, we find connections suggesting a single, intertwined story: the actions of fallen angels, their creation of hybrid beings, and the gods worshipped by people long ago. The Tower of Babel story from the Hebrew Bible aims to explain why people speak different languages. It tells us that once all humans spoke one language and decided to build a tower to reach the heavens in Babylon. However, God viewed this as overreaching and mixed up their languages, scattering them across the world. But this story isn't just about a failed construction project. It's also a tale about humans' desire to be united and make a name for themselves, and how this clashed with divine wishes. Some researchers think the Tower of Babel might have been inspired by real places, like the Annunaki ziggurat dedicated to the god Marduk in Babylon, hinting that the Bible story could be rooted in actual historical sites and events. Interestingly, similar themes appear in myths from different cultures. For example, a Sumerian story tells of a time when everyone spoke the same language until the god Enki caused confusion, possibly because of rivalry with another god, Enlil. This indicates that stories of gods meddling in human affairs are common in ancient writings. This broad examination invites us to think deeply about the connections between ancient civilizations' myths and the possibility that their gods and mythical tales might stem from a real historical blend of divine intervention and human storytelling. Nimrod, known for his connection with the Tower of Babel, really brings out the conflict between gods and humans in these stories. Seen as a great hunter and a king, Nimrod's decision to build this tower and city is often viewed as his way of making a name for himself, which closely resembles the goals of the fallen angels mentioned in other old stories. So the Tower of Babel isn't just a story about why people speak different languages. It's a major moment in the Bible that changes the direction of its narrative. It ends the time when everyone believed in the same God and starts the story of Abraham and his family, who would go on to have a special relationship with God. This idea that divine actions or interventions can completely change human societies is a theme that appears not just in the Bible, but in many other cultures' myths as well, from Egypt to Greece to Babylon to China. These stories might not just be imaginative tales, but could hint at real divine ambitions and their impact on people. Talking about this theory really gets the imagination going and opens up new questions for historians and scholars. However, it's important to remember that these are just theories, and connecting the dots between different cultures and their myths involves a lot of guesswork. Our ancestors' world was complex and full of mysteries, many of which we might never fully understand. But that doesn't stop us from asking questions and exploring these stories. Doing so helps us keep the spirit of our ancestors alive and adds richness to the story of humanity. The journey to understand our past and where we come from seems to never end, constantly offering us new and surprising insights. It encourages us to look at history with fresh eyes and consider that our ancestors' world might have been much more intertwined with divine dramas than we previously thought. By exploring these stories, we not only pay homage to the curious minds that came before us, but also open ourselves up to discovering truths that could change how we see human history and our role in the universe. Could ancient myths and gods be real stories from our past? Think about it and hit like and subscribe for more.